the final seal. In the final book of the Bible, a dramatic scene unfolds in the throne room of heaven. A mysterious scroll is presented, secured tightly with 7 seals. According to the text, the opening of these seals releases forces of conquest, war, famine, and ultimate cosmic upheaval. Today, millions of people look at this ancient vision and attempt to connect it to modern news headlines. They search for specific political leaders, 21st century wars, and hidden timelines predicting the exact end of the world. But this modern approach raises a critical question. If we strip away the internet theories, the best-selling novels, and the modern prophecy myths, what did the 7 seals actually mean to the people who first read about them? To understand the true mystery of the 7 seals, we must leave the modern world behind and step back into the 1st century. The book of Revelation was written during a time of immense tension. The earliest Christian communities were scattered across Asia Minor, living under the overwhelming shadow of the Roman Empire. They were a small, marginalized group, often facing intense pressure to participate in the imperial cult, which demanded that they worship the Roman emperor as a god. It was within this environment of political dominance and looming persecution that a man named John, exiled on the island of Patmos, recorded his extraordinary visions. When John describes a scroll with 7 seals in Revelation chapter 5, a modern reader might imagine a magical object. But for a 1st century audience living under Roman law, a sealed scroll was a very familiar and deeply significant legal document. In the ancient Roman world, important legal documents such as title deeds, marriage contracts, and especially last wills and testaments were frequently rolled up, tied with threads and secured with wax seals. Under Roman law, a testament typically required the presence of exactly 7 witnesses. Each witness would press their unique signet ring into a piece of wax on the exterior of the scroll. Therefore, when the original audience heard about a scroll sealed with 7 seals, they did not think of a distant, abstract puzzle. They recognized it as an ultimate, unchangeable legal document. In the context of the heavenly vision, this scroll represents the sovereign will of God. It is the divine title deed to the earth, containing God's final plan to judge evil, redeem creation, and establish his eternal kingdom. The tension in the vision builds when a mighty angel asks who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll. When no one in heaven or on earth is found worthy, John begins to weep bitterly. The destiny of the world seems completely paralyzed. The resolution to this cosmic crisis is one of the most powerful moments in the biblical text. John is told to look at the Lion of the tribe of Judah, a traditional symbol of a conquering military king. But when John turns to look, he does not see a fierce beast of prey. Instead, he sees a lamb looking as if it had been slain. This striking contrast is central to the entire message of Revelation. It demonstrates that the ultimate victory over evil was not achieved through violent military conquest, but through the sacrificial death of Jesus. Because of this sacrifice, the Lamb alone is authorized to take the scroll and break the seals, setting God's final plan into motion. This brings us to the most misunderstood aspect of the book of Revelation. The text was written in a highly specific genre known as apocalyptic literature. This genre relies heavily on intense, dreamlike symbolism to communicate deep spiritual and political truths. It uses cosmic imagery to describe earthly realities. The 1st century readers understood this language perfectly. They knew that when the text spoke of falling stars, darkened suns, or terrifying beasts, it was not offering a literal scientific forecast. It was revealing the spiritual reality behind the terrifying political powers of their own day. Yet, as the centuries passed, this ancient framework was largely forgotten by the general public. The powerful symbols, originally meant to comfort persecuted believers, began to be treated as a secret code waiting to be cracked by modern prophecy experts. But as we prepare to examine the breaking of the first four seals, we must ask a vital question. If the infamous four horsemen were not meant to predict a specific conflict in our modern era, what terrifying reality were they actually describing to the original Christians? Continuo para a proxima parte dois? The breaking of the first four seals unleashes what are undoubtedly the most famous figures in the entire book of Revelation. As the Lamb opens each of the first four seals, a heavenly creature commands four mysterious riders to come forward. A rider on a white horse goes out as a conqueror. A rider on a red horse is given power to take peace from the earth. A rider on a black horse carries a pair of scales. And finally, a rider on a pale green horse emerges, explicitly named Death. The controversy surrounding these passages is intense, primarily because different Christian traditions interpret these terrifying figures in radically different ways. In the modern era, the most popular interpretation is strictly futuristic. Many contemporary readers argue that the opening of the seals represents a chronological timeline of the final years of human history. Under this view, commentators frequently attempt to match the four horsemen with specific modern threats. They suggest the White Rider is a future political antichrist, the Red Rider represents modern nuclear warfare, and the Black Rider predicts an upcoming global economic collapse. But historians and biblical scholars point out a major flaw in this approach. If the seals were strictly about 21st century geopolitical events, the text would have offered absolutely no meaning, comfort, or relevance to the first century Christians who were suffering and dying for their faith. This brings us to a second major interpretation, which anchors the seals firmly in the ancient world. To the original readers, these symbols described terrifying realities they already knew. For example, the first rider on the white horse carries a bow. In the first century, the most famous mounted archers in the world belonged to the Parthian Empire, Rome's greatest military rival on its eastern border. The Red Rider, who causes men to slaughter one another, perfectly mirrored the constant threat of civil war, a reality the Roman Empire had brutally experienced just a few decades prior. The third seal introduces a fascinating contradiction that completely challenges modern assumptions. As the black horse appears, a voice announces that a quart of wheat will cost a denarius, which was an entire day's wage for an ancient laborer. This clearly indicates severe famine and soaring food prices. But the voice adds a strange command, telling the rider not to harm the oil and the wine. Modern readers often struggle to explain this detail. However, historically, it reflects a well-known economic injustice within the Roman system. Basic staples for the poor were scarce and expensive, while the luxury goods enjoyed by the wealthy elite, like olive oil and wine, remained protected and abundant. When the fourth seal brings the pale horse of death, followed closely by Hades, the complete picture of human empire is revealed. Together, these four forces represent conquest, violence, economic oppression, and mortality. This leads to a third widely respected interpretation, often called the idealist or symbolic view. In this understanding, the seals do not represent one single sequence of events at the end of time. Instead, they illustrate the recurring cycles of suffering that will characterize human history as long as corrupt empires rule the earth. This cyclical interpretation fundamentally changes how we read the next dramatic moment in the text. When the fifth seal is opened, the focus shifts entirely from the earthly realm back to heaven. John sees the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God, resting beneath the heavenly altar. They cry out with a loud voice, asking how long it will be before their blood is avenged. If the seals are only a future timeline, these martyrs are restricted to individuals killed in a final global tribulation. But for the earliest Christians, this seal spoke directly to their own immediate tragedy. Their friends, family members, and leaders were actively being executed by the empire. The fifth seal validated their suffering and promised that God had not forgotten them, even though justice seemed delayed. The tension reaches a breaking point with the opening of the sixth seal. The text describes a great earthquake, the sun turning black, the moon turning blood red, and the stars falling from the sky. Today, speculators search for literal astronomical anomalies or predictions of nuclear winter. But in ancient Jewish prophetic literature, this exact cosmic language was consistently used to describe something else entirely. Ancient prophets used the imagery of falling stars and darkened suns to describe the sudden, catastrophic collapse of corrupt political empires, not the literal unraveling of the physical universe. This raises a profound final question. If the first six seals describe the tragic reality of human history and the fall of empires, what shocking revelation is hidden behind the seventh and final seal? Continuo para proxima parte tres? The climax of any apocalyptic vision is supposed to be the moment of absolute, overwhelming destruction. After the terrifying cosmic collapse witnessed in the sixth seal, the original readers would have braced themselves for the ultimate end of the world. When the Lamb finally breaks the seventh and final seal in chapter 8, we expect a deafening roar of thunder, the immediate destruction of evil, and the loud triumph of divine judgment. But the text delivers one of the most unexpected and profound twists in all of biblical literature. Instead of noise, there is silence. The text simply states that when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. For centuries, readers have struggled to interpret this mysterious quiet. Some modern commentators attempt to calculate exactly what 30 minutes means on a prophetic calendar, often converting it into weeks or years. But in the ancient Jewish liturgical tradition, silence had a very specific and awe-inspiring meaning. It was the solemn hush that fell over the temple when incense was offered to God. In the vision of Revelation, this profound silence in heaven represents all of creation holding its breath. It is the moment when the prayers of the suffering saints, the cries of the martyrs from the fifth seal, are finally heard before the throne of God. This stunning detail forces us to organize the evidence and analyze exactly what the opening of the scroll actually accomplishes. The popular myth tells us that the seven seals are a chronological, hidden roadmap predicting modern warfare, specific political leaders, and the exact sequence of events for a 21st century tribulation. But the historical and biblical evidence strongly supports a very different conclusion. The book of Revelation was given to the first century church as a message of ultimate hope, not as a puzzle designed to induce modern panic. What the evidence supports is that the seals reveal the underlying spiritual realities of human history. As long as human empires operate on the principles of power and greed, the earth will experience the devastating realities of the four horsemen. There will be conquest, conflict, economic disparity, and death. The earliest Christians were intimately familiar with these forces. They understood that the seals were not predicting distant future events, but rather explaining the tragic world in which they already lived. More importantly, the vision of the seals assured them that God was not blind to their suffering. The scroll was securely in the hands of the Lamb, meaning that human history, no matter how chaotic it appeared, was firmly under divine authority. What remains uncertain to many modern readers is how to apply this ancient message today. The strongest interpretation appears to be that the Book of Revelation invites every generation to look at their own world through the lens of Patmos. Whenever a political system demands absolute allegiance, whenever wealth is protected while the poor starve, and whenever innocent people are persecuted for their faith, the horsemen are riding. But the central promise of the seven seals is that these corrupt human systems do not have the final word. The silence in heaven guarantees that the cries of the oppressed are heard and justice will ultimately be served. By stripping away the modern conspiracy theories, we recover a document of unparalleled majesty. The biggest myth about the Book of Revelation is that it is a book about fear. In reality, it is a book about courage. It taught the early Christians how to endure the overwhelming power of the Roman Empire by showing them that the true king was not Caesar on his throne, but the sacrificial lamb. However, the breaking of the final seal does not mean the vision is over. The silence in heaven is merely the quiet before the storm. Immediately following the seventh seal, 7 angels step forward, and they are handed 7 trumpets. The blowing of these trumpets unleashes a new sequence of astonishing symbols, from burning mountains cast into the sea to an army of unnatural locusts rising from the abyss. Are these trumpets describing literal ecological disasters, or do they hold a deeper connection to the plagues of ancient Egypt? If you would like the next investigation to examine the mystery of the 7 trumpets and what they truly represent, leave the word trumpets in the comments.